you have any like tips for like breaking out of uh like an autopilot? Like I'm like it's hard to like do that because like when you're autopiloting, you're not thinking about the fact that you're autopiloting.
Yeah. So how would I do that? That's a really good question. I honestly, all right. So here's what worked for me, and this may be controversial, maybe not. I don't know, but here's what worked for me. Was a while back I dropped a ton of MR. I dropped like 300 MR or something, right? I went way down,
Okay.
like 1350, 1400, something like that. And what I did to break out of what I was doing was I picked one. Well, in this case, since I play Ken, I picked one button. I said I'm going to win every game with stand heavy punch, right? Ken's best button, right? Like I'm not gonna use crouching medium kick. Yeah, as good as that button is, I'm just gonna use stand heavy punch.
Evil winner.
Yeah, evil winning, right? Button of the year, right?
Yeah.
With crouching medium kick. But what I decided to do was what I realized what I was doing was I was autopiloting crouching medium kick drive rush, right? I was fishing for that. That's all I ever did, right? And players that
Yeah.
stopped that or able to deal with the mix up were killing me basically, right? So I decided I'm going to use one button, right? Stand heavy punch, and I'm gonna it's a confirmable button, right? It's slow, but if I space it
Yeah.
correctly, it's fairly safe, right? I can confirm it into whatever I want to confirm it into, and I can use it in the corner, right? Like I can use it to bully people in the corner. What it forced me to do was pay more attention to the spacing I was standing at when I was pressing the button. It also forced me to pay attention to what the opponent was doing. Because my offense at the time was I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do, right? I'm going to run my offense and you have to deal with it, right? But
Yeah.
if you run into somebody that can deal with it, then I didn't have an option, right? I couldn't really quote unquote play footsies. So what I did was that I took a ranked session where I didn't really care about my MR anymore because it's already tanked, right? Who cares? So I
Yeah.
didn't really care about what was happening. Instead, I focused on the result, or sorry, the process and the process that I was going through, which was I want to ensure that when I press my stand heavy punch, it always lands, blocked or hit, always lands. I never whiff it, right? And
Hmm.
and I pay attention to what the opponent is doing in spacing so that I never whiff, right? So what started happening for me was that I started paying its more attention to what was actually happening in game, and I was able to react to what was happening, right? Now, of course, I was only using one button, so it meant that my reaction at that time, the way I reacted to it, meant that I had to be a little creative sometimes, in terms of like how do I whiff punish something. But what it did do was it broke my tendency to keep falling into the same pattern over and over again, right? So
Hmm.
it forced my brain to consider the spacing and my opponent's tendencies versus me just pressing the button, right? Now, whether that will work for you, I can't say for sure, right? Like, I don't know if that will work or not. I don't know how, if you're willing to do the MR like drop that will happen inevitably because you are going to lose a bunch of MR doing this because, you're not used to it, right? But it is
Yeah.
something that helped me break out of that was to not use the tools that I was relying on as much and instead focus on a different tool which I should be relying on more, but I really wasn't because I was being held back by my inability to read space and opponents' tendencies and movements, right? So changing up that pattern and how I approach the game and kind of intentionally limiting myself to force myself to do that is what helped me, right? Ultimately, I did end up better for it, right? And you can kind of see that I use more of the
Yeah.
tools that I try to use more of the tools, but ultimately that is what worked for me. Now again, what worked for you, I don't know. You can give it a try. Maybe go into custom rooms, find some guys in Fight Rise, play them, and do that. Like it's totally fine to try that. But that was what helped. Was like a lot of times the autopilot thing means you're focusing. You're not. Your brain isn't focusing on the parts of the game where you can like adjust what you're doing. You're just kind of making sure that you're doing what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And by me playing that way, it forced me to react to what they're doing because I only have one option, right? And it was actually
Yeah.
kind of stupidly effective, right? Once I got a sense of where the spacing and timing for it was just like I could just throw that button whenever I wanted to, and it worked for the most part, right? So, it something to try. Now, again, you may lose a bunch of MR, but who cares? At least for me, it's who cares.
Yeah. It's just the
So,
points.
yeah, it's just points, right? But
Yeah.
because what's happening when you autopilot is that your brain is kind of bypassing the conscious thinking part, right? You're just kind of doing the
Yeah.
thing. So if
Just
you
doing
can
things on
reintroduce
vibes.
that, that might help you, right? Now, of course, you do want subconscious, thought, right? You want to like combos need to be autopiloted, right? Oki
Yeah.
setups need to be autopiloted 100%. But some of the conscious decision making needs to be reintroduced in some of those scenarios to help you break out of like, oh, I always press this button into this button, right? Or always throw this fireball into jump or whatever, right? Like that's how you, I feel is how you break out of that. So yeah,